Part 83. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 821. This general wants to know your name and identity, Ge Yunhui said in a cold tone, otherwise, when I get to the underworld, the king of hell will ask me by whose hands my general died, and I won't know how to answer. Xiejin raised his eyebrows. Didn't General Ge die by your own hands? This epidemic in the city should be the work of the general. Ge Yunhui was shocked, and then sneered, since you know this, you still dare to come? Aren't you afraid that the epidemic virus will be spread and there is no cure? Why don't you dare to come? You should see with your own eyes who the generals sent by South Vietnam are. I am also curious about what the generals who fled without fighting look like on the battlefield. Xiejin smiled casually. When I saw him today, I wasn't too disappointed, at least in appearance. General Ge is tall and mighty, and he is a talented person, and he should be very popular with the Queen of South Vietnam. Ge Yunhui's expression was cold. Ming Zi defected to Dongling. That's not true. Xiejin shook his head. Dongling doesn't need such people to take refuge, but Master Mingzi did help us a lot in the Battle of Quang, which greatly saved us the time to attack the city. Ge Yunhui's eyes were cold. The Dongling army does not plan to attack the city, but instead sends you to die. Xiejin smiled carelessly. His face and expression were covered by the black scarf. Only his eyes revealed a hint of smile. It doesn't matter whether you want to die or not. We must attack the city, but we can't be too anxious. Otherwise, wouldn't I fall into your trap? Ge Yunhui's pupils shrank suddenly and his voice was cold. Kill him. As soon as he finished speaking, the 4 dead soldiers around him started to move at the same time. When death soldiers and shadow guards take action, their attacks are killing moves. Killing with one move is always faster, ruthless and more ruthless. If one move is missed, there will be no chance to use the second move. Just like this time. When the 4 dead soldiers froze and suddenly fell to the ground like puppets before the daggers in their hands came close to Ming Mei, all the blood on Ge Yunhui's face instantly faded. His life also came to an end. The dagger in Xiejin's hand had already pierced his heart, and a few drops of blood spattered on the black clothes. Xiejin glanced down, ignored it, let go, and the dagger was inserted into Ge Yunhui's heart. He turned around. Let's go. Ming Mei followed him out and out of the mansion. The two of them suddenly sped up and jumped up to the high wall in a few seconds. The wind was calm at night. Xiejin turned around and looked at it for a while. After confirming that there was nothing abnormal, he started to take off his black clothes. Today he wore 3 layers. After taking off the outermost layer, he bent down and slowly put on his feet. The black cloth he was wearing was also taken off and thrown away. Then he flew away as fast as a rock, spreading its wings. At the same time, Mo Lingan in the other direction also made the same move. Ming Yan and Ming Mei met from the north and south, and after confirming that all the dead soldiers in the city had been wiped out, they both turned around and chased in the direction Xiejin left. Black clothes and face scarves fell one by one in Fengshi City. Whoosh! 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 The ignited arrows were filled with fierce and murderous aura, shot in from the open city gate, and burned quickly when encountering tung oil. They were on the big trees in the city, at the corners of the walls, in the granaries, and under the eaves. The 6,000 cavalry were divided into 2, with 3,000 men and horses standing outside the north and south gates. 100 meters away, soldiers in armor and cloaks were holding bows and arrows. The flaming arrows in the front row were shooting fiercely into the city gate one after another. At this moment, a desperate and anxious voice suddenly sounded in the city. It's on fire! It's on fire! Run! The Dongling army is attacking the city. Run for your life! Xian Yuanyao's eyes were like swords, and he stretched out his hand to point in the direction of the city gate. In an instant, hundreds of arrows were pointed directly in the direction of the open city gate, and the first person rushed out. Whoosh! The arrow was shot out, hitting the vital part of the man's heart. Before he even stepped out of the city gate, the man fell down with a howl. Immediately after the second person, the third person rushed out. He was in a panic, like an ant on a hot pot. There is a fire in the city and there is a plague. If you stay here, you will die. At this time, there is still a glimmer of hope for escape. However, the upright little leopard had no extra sympathy and mercy at this time, and shouted coldly, "Fire the arrow!" Whoosh! 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 Arrows rained down one after another, killing all those who tried to rush out of the city gate on the spot, leaving no one alive. Ah! Ah! Scream, wail, beg for mercy, surrender. The screams and sounds of despair are endless. Xian Yuanyao's face was as dark as water, like the leader of death in the dark night, and there was no trace of softness on his handsome and cold face. The raging fire spread fiercely in an instant, engulfing the city bit by bit. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 822. Xiejin took off the second layer of clothes in a small forest 20 miles outside Fengxi. His shirt, trousers, and boots were all taken off and piled together, and they were all set on fire and burned. Before the clothes were burned, Lingen also arrived. Like Xiejin, he took off the second layer of clothes and shoes and socks, threw them into the fire without saying a word, stood barefoot in front of the fire, and watched silently. Clothes were engulfed in fireworks. Although the two of them have different statuses in the imperial capital, they have always been calm, noble, and suave. This is the first time they have been so disheveled in the wilderness. The night wind blew by, and the flames swayed rapidly and then burned more intensely, making the burning clothes make a squeaking sound. Ming Yan and Ming Mei arrived one after another, silently doing the same thing, taking off their clothes and shoes and throwing them into the fire. The fireworks dimmed, and then the flames shot higher. The four of them were barefoot, standing here alone in the cold night of late autumn, wearing only a thin black suit, like abandoned travelers. The jumping firelight illuminated the embarrassment of the four people at this time, as well as the calmness between their eyebrows. Silence lasted for a moment. "I think we need 4 hairs." Lingen spoke first, his voice was light and there was no sound. "Are you hungry?" Hungry. Xiejin took a step back and sat on the floor, his eyes falling on the burning fire. "I also need a cup of hot tea." Ming Yan didn't say anything, and lit another bonfire nearby with the help of fire. Ming Mei went to pick up some branches, set up a shelf on the fire, and the two of them quickly disappeared into the woods. "We have to be isolated from them for these 2 days. We have to learn to be self-reliant." Lingen sat down next to Xiejin. "Xiejin, have you ever thought that you will die young?" This question is a bit abrupt, but it somehow fits the scene tonight. Xiejin was silent for a moment and said in a leisurely tone, "I have thought about it before." Lingen raised his eyebrows. "Your majestic chief minister's legitimate son actually thought that he would die young." "Is it weird?" Xiejin smiled lightly. "God's will is unpredictable. No one can be sure how long he can live. There is nothing wrong with thinking about it earlier. In fact, I was young at that time, with an arrogant temperament, and I thought I had long ignored life and death. The fact is that I had not even experienced real life, and my thoughts were really childish." Lingen nodded. "What now?" "Now I am naturally afraid of death. After all, I have more worries." A gentle smile appeared on Xiejin's face, but having said that, Life and death are not matters that I can decide. Although I was not afraid of death before, I didn't want to die either. Because I still have parents, and this wonderful world is worth cherishing. Lincoln hummed, that makes sense. Life and death have always been about whether they are worth it or not whether they are worth it or not. Siejin said, even if I now have someone I need to care about for the rest of my life, if I really encounter something that requires me to sacrifice my life, I still have to put the overall situation first. Even a beggar knows that it is better to live than to die, not to mention that he, a person who has never experienced setbacks in half his life, is born to enjoy glory and wealth, so there is no reason for him to look down on life and death too much. Besides, now that I have a beloved young man, I should protect my life even more for him. Lincoln lay slowly on the ground and looked up at the sky. Master Ju's mind is indeed extraordinary. We ordinary people need to learn from it. Siejin snorted, if I had a choice, I wouldn't want to sacrifice my life for justice. I would also like to grow old with Yao Yao. What if you regret it before you are old? Lincoln tilted his head to look at him. Maybe just after your 30s, you will suddenly find that after tasting the freshness, you are still as gentle as water. The soft beauties are cuter. When Siejin heard this, his eyebrows narrowed slightly. What do you mean? Instead of being unlucky in the future, why not go to hell first while the deep love is still there and the relationship is still good, so that Yao Yao will remember me for the rest of his life? Lincoln said, are you willing to do so? Are you sick, or am I sick? Siejin glanced sideways at him. I have been with Yao Yao for just 2 years. If I die now, Yao Yao won't cry to death. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 823. The corner of Lincoln's mouth raised slightly. Maybe you just died and you got married to someone as beautiful as a flower. Will you cry for you? What are you thinking about? Just be jealous. Siejin lay down and put his hands behind his head. I can't guarantee my farewell. Yao Yao's love is ironclad. If something happens to me, he will definitely guard me like a jade for the rest of his life. Don't marry. Lincoln sneered, speechless at his confidence. Silently looking at the night sky, he said, we should actually bring some herbs here, in case we unfortunately get sick. If you are really infected, herbal medicine will not work. Siejin said, there is no cure for the epidemic so far, and famous doctors are also helpless. I haven't married yet. Lincoln sighed, if I really hand over my life here, my father will definitely scold me as an unfilial son. Probably not, don't think about it so much. Siejin said calmly, even if something happens, it's not a loss for you to have me accompany you. As he finished speaking, he saw Ming Yan and Ming Mei walking out of the woods from the corner of his eye. They each held 2 hares in their hands. 4 hares were brought over, but there was not one more. Lincoln hummed, I didn't replace the hare with a pheasant. Ming Yan and Ming Mei didn't speak. They handled the rabbits in their hands skillfully, peeled the skin and removed the internal organs, cleaned them up and roasted them on the fire. Unfortunately, there was no oil, otherwise they could have put some oil on them and put some sauce on them. Ming Yan and Ming Mei were in charge of roasting the rabbit, while Siejin and Lincoln were in charge of chatting. After a while, the smell of meat came out and penetrated the nostrils, instantly arousing the greed in the stomach. I'm hungry. Lincoln sat up and looked at the 2 men's skillful barbecue movements. Siejin, please give me the nightmare. Siejin refused without hesitation, dream. Mei Mei is fine too. No way. Siejin said, raising his eyebrows, you can ask him if he is willing. Lincoln looked at Ming Mei, are you willing? Ming Mei calmly said, no. Lincoln frowned, why? Ming Mei didn't even raise her head. She only said one word and then stopped answering. She concentrated on roasting the rabbit in her hand and handed one to Xiejin. Xiejin reached out to take it, tore off a rabbit leg and started eating. I won't even give them to you for the sake of Mingmei's barbecue, Xiejin said. If I are on the run from now on, I won't worry about starving to death if Mingmei and Mingmei are around. You're already on the run, and you're still worried about starving to death. Amo Lingon took the rabbit handed over by Mingyan and looked towards the north. Fengshi should be burning like a raging fire right now. Xiejin followed his line of sight and looked over, but only saw darkness. Our mission has been completed. Next is the matter of Yao Yao and his cavalry. Whether it is a sky-high fire or a raging fire, it indicates the lifespan of South Vietnam. It was shortened by at least half a month. The four of them finished eating the meat and lay quietly on the ground to rest for a while. This is the first time in my life that I have slept in the wilderness. Xiejin looked at the night sky. It's a pity that there are no stars tonight, otherwise we could still count the stars together. Amo Lingon said, Master Xieju, are you going to rejuvenate yourself? Who said that those who count stars must be children? Xiejin smiled lightly. Are there so many fortune tellers who watch the stars at night? Amo Lingon crossed his legs and swayed leisurely in front of the fire. The eldest prince of Yu Kingdom should be considered a relatively powerful fortune teller, but don't tell me, his temperament is like that of a child, very childish. It is indeed childish, and he has a vicious tongue, Xiejin judged, but Her Majesty the Queen is tolerant of him. Amo Lingon closed his eyes slightly. Her Majesty the Queen and the Lord seem to be covered with a veil, which makes people unpredictable. Xiejin was silent for a moment, then hummed, it's so elusive that people can't see through it. What do you think Prince Yao is doing right now? Nothing has been done, Xiejin said lightly. The fire burned him for 3 days and 3 nights, burning all the living things in Fengshi city together with the poison. After the cavalry passed through the city, they would no longer be exposed to any stop him and go directly to the Nanyue imperial city. The Emperor of South Vietnam should regret it now. It's useless to regret, Xiejin said, who makes him lack self-awareness. He is obviously stupid and incompetent, but he still thinks that he is an unparalleled king and wants to be the emperor for eternity. I don't know who gave him the confidence. Amo Lingon said, My lord, those who are truly wise and powerful have no ambitions, while those who are incompetent think they are so powerful. In the past, I always thought that the Lord did not have the ambition to conquer the world. He was delayed by the tenderness of women, his fighting spirit was wiped out, and he lost the opportunity to become the emperor of the ages. Xiejin smiled faintly. Now I understand that a person's inner satisfaction is not about how big the territory is, but that the person you like is right in front of you. They can rejoice for each other's joy, and can become each other's sustenance and support. Just looking at him, there is an uncontrollable joy in my heart. I hope to be together all the time and never have to be separated. This feeling cannot be replaced by any amount of territory. The corner of Amo Lingon's mouth twitched. Don't say this in front of me, I don't understand. Of course you don't understand, Xiejin sneered. If the world is truly unified, the affairs of the 4 seas and 9 states will be handled by one person, and there will be a snowflake of memorials piled on the imperial court every day. Even if Her Majesty the Queen and the Regent work together dealing with government affairs and spending most of the day immersed in government affairs, do you think this is the life the Lord wants? Amo Lingon said nothing. Let's talk about me. Although I like the heroic appearance of the little leopard in the military camp and his commanding demeanor on the battlefield, I often feel reluctant to part with him and often worry about the blindness of swords. Xiejin was melancholy. In comparison, the peaceful and quiet days are too worth cherishing, and I don't want to miss them for a moment. When I have someone I like, I understand the great cause that the master gave up for the love of his children. Life is only a few decades long. Who doesn't want to live a peaceful life with the one they love? It seems that I should find a woman to marry. Amo Lingon couldn't help but feel sour when he heard the happiness in Xiejin's tone. After this incident, I will get married when I go back, so that my father can hold a big fat grandson, so that he won't always worry about what shameful things I did outside, for fear that I would be silenced one day. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 824. The entire Fengshi city was engulfed in a huge fire, and everything in the city was burned to ashes. The scorching air seemed to warm the air 20 miles outside Fengshi city. Xiejin and Mo Ling'an fell asleep by the campfire, using the sky as a blanket and the ground as a mat. However, at dawn, Xiejin suddenly heard a burst of urgent horse hooves. He woke up from his dream and sat up to find that Mingjian and Mingmei had stood up, staring at the direction where the horses were galloping without saying a word. Xiejin watched quietly for a moment, and when he saw the familiar young man, he suddenly stood up and shouted coldly, "Stop!" The young man held the reins and stopped the horse. The two sides were nearly 100 meters apart, but it seemed as if they were separated by the ends of the earth. Xiejin rarely flew forward to hug Yao Yao's waist as usual, but spoke seriously, "Just stand there and don't move. Don't get closer." Xianyuan Yao sat upright on the horse, followed by his 18 guards. The morning air was cool. He had been running all the way here, and his whole body was full of fatigue, which made Xiejin feel particularly distressed. Xianyuan Yao's eyes fell on Xiejin and Mo Ling'an, and his eyebrows sank slightly. "Are you okay?" "It's okay." Mo Ling'an stood up and dusted off the dust on his body. "I slept on the same bed with Master Xieju last night, and I slept very peacefully." Xianyuan Yao's eyebrows twitched. "What do you mean by sleeping on the same bed?" Xiejin frowned and looked at him. "Can you speak?" "The sky is the quilt." Mo Ling'an pointed to the sky, and then pointed to the ground under his feet. "The ground is the mat." Xiejin was silent. Mo Ling'an raised his eyebrows. "Aren't we considered to be sleeping on the same bed and covering the same quilt?" "So, Mingjian and Mingmei are also sleeping on the same bed." Xiejin sneered. "My master had a strong taste last night." Mo Ling'an tooted. "What is Master Ju thinking?" "I mean, we are sleeping on the same bed on the earth and covering the same quilt on the sky. I didn't say what we did." "Why are you so sensitive?" Xiejin snorted coldly and didn't bother to pay attention to his nonsense. He really wanted to hug the little leopard now, but he was not sure whether he would be infected with the plague when he sneaked into Fengshi city last night. Now he had to hold back even if he wanted to hug. Yao Yao. Xiejin's eyes were gentle. "You go back first, Ling'an, and I will stay here for a few days, and I will find you when we are sure it is safe." Xianyuan Yao turned over and got off the horse, saying indifferently, "Fengshi city will have to burn for 2 more days, I will stay here with you." "No." Xiejin refused. "I don't need you to accompany me." Xianyuan Yao frowned. "With Mo Ling'an here, and Mingyan and Mingmei protecting my safety, you don't have to worry about anything." Xiejin pointed to the extinguished bonfire. "We roasted a rabbit last night, you haven't eaten yet. Take your 18 guards back to Kuang City to eat and rest. Don't forget that you will attack the capital of Nanyu next. The army needs to conserve its strength, and you, the commander, need to boost their morale. Don't let them worry." Xianyuan Yao was silent for a moment. "I have told Anyi and Yufan everything." Xianyuan Yao. Xiejin's face sank, and he interrupted him expressionlessly. "Don't you understand what I said?" Xianyuan Yao pursed his lips, his expression a little stubborn. "The Nanyu troops have been disbanded and have no resistance. Next, whether I am here or not, there will be no obstacles to attacking Nanyu." "I don't want to hear this." Xiejin frowned. "Don't forget your responsibilities, unless you can get Her Majesty the Queen to immediately order a replacement, otherwise this is not the time for you to be willful, and the battlefield is not the occasion for you to show your true feelings and never give up." Xianyuan Yao was silent. "Don't mess around." Xiejin's tone became more and more firm. "Go back immediately." As soon as the words fell, the already cold weather became even colder. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 825. Xian Yuanyao's expression was completely gone. He looked at him without saying a word. The atmosphere seemed to freeze. Xiejin's expression was cold, revealing a toughness that would not tolerate rejection. After a long while, Xian Yuanyao slowly frowned and looked at him with dissatisfaction. Are you ordering me? Xiejin, please speak properly. Mo Ling'an subconsciously turned his head to look at the extinguished fire, and sighed softly. How can you use an ordering tone to your sweetheart? You have to coax her well. As he said, he muttered softly, you are obviously concerned about Prince Yao. Why are you so aggressive? It's a pity that you kept showing off how good Prince Yao was in front of me last night. Why is he like this now? Sure enough, men's mouths are deceiving ghosts. Xiejin ignored him, locked his eyes on Xian Yuanyao's face, and finally softened his voice. Wait until the capital of Nanyu is taken, I will lie down and let you deal with me. Shut up. Xian Yuanyao was slightly annoyed. Xian Yuanxie, do you have any shame? Xiejin nodded meekly. Shame. Shame on you. You dare to say anything in front of so many people, and you still have shame? Xian Yuanyao's eyes were slightly angry, but he didn't act willfully anymore. You stay here and don't leave casually. I'll ask them to send some food and water when I go back. Xiejin said, there are also bedding and pillows. Mo Ling'an smiled and said, I can share a quilt with Master Xieju. You're dreaming. Xiejin glanced at him. My bed is not for everyone. You don't even have the qualifications to wash Yao Yao's feet. Mo Ling'an's face darkened. Do you believe I will push you into this fire? I don't believe it. Xiejin said arrogantly. With Yao Yao here, do you dare? Mo Ling'an was speechless. Xian Yuanyao calmly glanced at someone's expression of showing off. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise, but his tone was cold. This general has something else to do, so I'll leave first. He then jumped on the horse, turned the horse's head, and rode away without looking back. Xiejin stared at his back reluctantly, muttering, I really want to pick up Yao Yao and turn around to celebrate his merits. Mo Ling'an was about to say something, but he saw Xian Yuanyao suddenly riding back. He raised his eyebrows slightly. Are you so reluctant to leave? Mo Ling'an, Xiejin. Xian Yuanyao sat upright on his horse and stopped far away, looking down at Xiejin and Mo Ling'an. You survived this disaster. After you go back, I will write down your names in the merit book of this general, including Minjian and Mingmei, and wait for Her Majesty the Queen and the Regent to reward you according to your merits. Xiejin smiled gently. Okay, we will wait for the rewards. Xian Yuanyao rode away. Xiejin stared at his back until Xian Yuanyao and the 18 guards walked away and could no longer be seen. He then sat down by the fire again, hugged his knees, and said with a melancholy tone, I finally got the opportunity to get together with Yao Yao by transporting grain, but now we have to be apart for a few days. When I think of this, I wish I could tear off the head of the dog emperor of Nanyu, soak it in a jar of pickled cabbage and pickle it into a salted pig head, and feed it to the dog with sauce. Mo Ling'an's mouth twitched slightly. I thought you wanted to eat it yourself with sauce. Do you have such a strong taste? Xiejin tilted his head and glanced at him. If you want to eat it, I don't mind pickling it and giving it to you. Mo Ling'an shook his head slowly. I'm not interested in salting human brains. Xiejin and Mo Ling'an stayed in the suburbs, feeling the cold climate in late autumn, chatting and talking nonsense in the cold wind, enjoying themselves. Xian Yuanyao went back to clean up the mess. The soldiers he sent brought bedding and food to them at noon, and brought them a few sets of thick clothes and 4 pairs of shoes. With soft bedding and clothes to keep warm, and food and water, the days were not difficult to endure. Xiejin also did not let them get close, and just put down the bedding and clothes from a distance and left. This kind of life lasted for 3 days in a row. Every night Xian Yuanyao couldn't help riding a horse to take a look. Even if he couldn't get close, he just took a look from a distance to make sure that Xiejin and Mo Ling'an were safe and sound, and he was relieved. Fortunately, Xiejin and Amolingen were warriors with strong physical fitness and were not afraid of the cold. Although they stayed in the cold wind for 3 days, it was definitely not as comfortable as staying indoors, but the 3 days passed safely. It was another dark night, and the sky was full of stars. Xiejin, who had just finished eating a pheasant, lay on the ground covered with soft bedding, counting the stars one by one, with twinkling stars reflected in his pupils, and said in a lazy and leisurely voice, "Even the heavens are helping me, Dongling. Look how beautiful the night is tonight. The fire in Fengshi City has been burning for 2 consecutive days. The flames that reach the sky have burned everything, even the corpses have turned into ashes. The sky is clear and there is not a drop of rain. It shows that even God does not like Nanyu. I have slept in the wilderness for 3 consecutive days. These difficult days are finally over." Amolingen sighed softly. "I am afraid that a fox demon will come in the middle of the night to confuse me and make me do something shameful." Xiejin was slightly surprised, and then sneered, "You wish? Fox demon? I have read too many stories from Liuzai and dream all day long." Da-da-da. The sound of horse hooves galloped over. "Your sweetheart is here again." Amolingen spoke with a bit of helplessness. "I've had enough of you." In addition to enduring the cold wind these past 2 days, what he couldn't stand the most was the ubiquitous clinginess between Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao, which made him want to strip Xiejin naked and send her to Xian Yuanyao's bed. "You're just envious." Xiejin sat up and looked at the horse approaching from afar. When the face of the young man on the horse gradually came into view, Xiejin's smile just rose. "I'm waiting for the day when you fall." As he said, he raised his hand to greet, "Yao Yao." Amolingen lay on his back on the ground, his arms across his forehead, just covering his closed eyes. If possible, he wanted to plug his ears as well. "How do you feel today?" Xian Yuanyao sat on the horse's back, his eyes locked on Xiejin's noble and delicate face. "No discomfort. The only discomfort is that I can't sleep with Yao Yao in my arms." Xian Yuanyao was silent for a moment, and wanted him to be more subtle. There were people around, and it was not good to be too explicit. However, he was particularly considerate of Xiejin's hard work of sleeping outdoors in the suburbs. Of course, he himself was not at ease these 2 days. Burning Fengshi City was not as simple as setting the city on fire. There were many aftermath matters. Who could be much more relaxed? But Xiejin's hardship is not in sleeping in the open air, but in the psychological burden. Although he knows that the chance of contracting the disease under the protection of 3 layers of clothes is extremely small, he still can't help but worry about the 1 in 10,000 possibility. So Xian Yuanyao has been tolerant of Xiejin's disgusting behavior in the past 2 days and can't bear to blame him. "When can I go back?" Xiejin said. "Mingyan knows a little about medicine. If he says it's okay, it should be okay." Mingyan said calmly, "Just in case, you can stay outside for a few more days. The epidemic is not like other poisons or diseases. There is no antidote or treatment. There is no other way except to stay away from the source of infection. Everyone in Quyang City is strong and elite. If someone is infected, it will spread from 1 to 10 and from 10 to 100. The consequences are unimaginable. Leaving here and going to other places is not possible. If it is accidentally transmitted to innocent people, it will cause a large-scale epidemic infection. The safest way at the moment is to stay here and go nowhere. Stay a few more days." Amolingen took his hand away, frowning slightly. "I finally made it through 3 days, do you want to endure another 3 days? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered." Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 826. "There's nothing we can do about it," Xiejin said in a calm tone. "It's nothing for us to work hard. We're just afraid that the soldiers will be infected, and the consequences will be disastrous. Master Ju is right. Mo Lingon nodded slowly. I used to think that Master Ju of the Xie family only had a good-looking face. He relied on the power of his father, the chief minister, to dominate the imperial city and would not let anyone go. In his eyes, he is unruly, has his own way of doing things, is domineering, and is arrogant. Are you finished? Xie Jin frowned. Am I that bad? Right now, it seems that the rumors cannot be fully believed. Mo Lingon said unhurriedly. Only at the critical moment can we see Juye's unusual momentum and his willingness to sacrifice his life for justice and take the overall situation into consideration. Yes, Prince Yao didn't see it. Wrong person. Xie Jin looked at him speechlessly. Mo Lingon Xian Yuan Yao looked at him condescendingly. In the wilderness right now, if I package you up and sell you to bandits to be the wife of a stronghold, do you think anyone will rescue you? As soon as these words came out, the other 4 people present all expressed their expressions. Mo Lingon's face stiffened. What did Prince Yao say? Sold to bandits? I used to think that you were a normal man, who should have a wife and several concubines, and a house full of children and grandchildren. Xian Yuan Yao said in a calm tone, but now I realize that Mr. Mo seems to be interested in the relationship between me and Xie Jin. He is so jealous that he tries to provoke us in various ways. Can I think that Mr. Mo has this kind of thing? Xian Yuan Yao. Mo Lingon interrupted him, twitching the corners of his mouth again and again. You two husband and wife joined forces to bully me. Isn't it true that we can't win without force? Xie Jin's lips curved into a smile, and his eyes were filled with doting. If you don't bully Xie Jin, this prince will not bother to talk to you. After Xian Yuan Yao finished speaking, he turned to look at Xie Jin. Xian Yuan Xie, don't be too cheerful. I will settle the score with you after I get back. Xie Jin was stunned for a moment, then subconsciously asked, what's the settlement? What kind of debt do you want to settle? Xian Yuan Yao snorted coldly. How dare you point your finger at my general's nose and scream, who lent you the courage? Xie Jin. Mo Lingon coughed lightly. The general is mighty. I also feel that Mr. Xieju has been a little distracted these past 2 days. He needs to be taught some family skills. Xian Yuan Yao frowned and looked at Mo Lingon. Before he could speak, he saw that Mo Lingon had already given up. I know it's none of my business. Family law matters should be resolved by yourselves behind closed doors. I shut up. Xian Yuan Yao glanced at him expressionlessly, not knowing what to say for a moment. After a moment, he turned to look at Ming Yan and Ming Mei sitting by the bonfire. The 2 men in black were sitting in front of the bonfire, as if they had not heard the conversation between Xian Yuan Yao and Mo Lingon. Their expressions were blank from beginning to end. It is calm and indifferent, and it has nothing to do with oneself. Xian Yuan Yao looked away, said a few words to Xie Jin, and quickly rode away. Xian Yuan Yao still has to go back to arrange matters after burning the city, while Xie Jin and Mo Lingon continue to stay in the suburbs, isolated from the outside world. I wonder if there will be rain in the next few days. Mo Lingon looked up at the sky. It would be great if it rains heavily tonight. There are still embers after the fire. For such a big city, I don't know how long it will take for it to be completely burned. The high temperature after the embers also needs time to slowly cool down. If there is a timely rain, it can just extinguish the embers and cool down in time. This can save a few days. But the sky is full of stars tonight, and there should be no rain tomorrow. Ming Mei Xie Jin walked to the bonfire and sat down. Will it rain today? No. Ming Mei shook her head. It might rain tomorrow night. Can Ming Mei look at the weather? Mo Lingon was surprised. Is there anything else you can't do? Ming Mei was silent for a moment. Have a baby. There was silence all around. Mo Lingon lay on the ground silently, not knowing what to say. I have never been so frustrated that I can't even take a bath. Xie Jin frowned so much that he could kill mosquitoes. After this happens, I must take a hot bath when I go back to let Yao Yao sleep. Give me a good massage from head to toe. Amo Lincoln sneered, "You have to deal with the family law first before talking about it. Yao Yao is just a tough talker. Do you think he is really willing to do anything to me?" Xiejin retorted, "This is the relationship between the two of us. You know nothing." Amo Lincoln snorted, "I don't understand. Why don't I have someone who knows both coldness and warmth around me? I'm tired of looking at you all day long, and I get goosebumps all over my body." Xiejin was about to say something when he suddenly remembered something and sat down next to Amo Lincoln. Amo Lincoln turned his head and stared at his sudden change of attitude suspiciously. "What are you doing? Don't report this incident of fueling and killing people to the Lord. We can try to be unsung heroes." Amo Lincoln was puzzled. "Why? Don't report it if I ask you not to," Xiejin said in a serious tone. "The epidemic is really dangerous. I don't want the Lord to worry, let alone my parents. If you report to the Lord, what if my father and you are worried? Dad knows how worried they are at home." Amo Lincoln pondered for a moment. "I can promise you, but the information seems to have been sent out 2 days ago. If you want to get the information back now, calculating the days, it may be difficult." Xiejin was silent and looked at him expressionlessly. "What's wrong?" Amo Lincoln looked at his abnormal expression strangely. "The Lord will probably burn the information after reading it. How can you tell the chief assistant to make him worry? You don't have to think about this." Xiejin said, "Our action this time should not be considered as risking our lives." "Why not?" Amo Lincoln raised his eyebrows. "The epidemic is not like other knife wounds or sword wounds. If you are not careful, you may lose your life at any time. This is not considered risking your life." Xiejin looked at him calmly, turned his head and stared at the burning bonfire. The dancing flames reflected his handsome face, which seemed to be a little more entangled. "Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 827. The two people who followed Amo Lincoln into Quyang City were his spies. Xiejin and Amo Lincoln took Mingye and Mingmei to pour oil and sneak into Fengshi City to kill the soldiers in order to prevent death. The soldiers brought the plague out of the city. The dead soldiers were skilled, fast, and received special training. They did not care about any cost in order to complete the task. Once they are allowed to leave Fengshi and bring the epidemic into the army, it will be a devastating disaster for the Dongling army. Therefore, Xiejin and Amo Lincoln's actions of killing soldiers regardless of life and death can be regarded as a great achievement. After Xianyu Enyao ordered his troops to attack the city, he had people write down their achievements in detail, and they were responsible for Amo Lincoln's subordinates. The two subordinates of the intelligence team learned about what happened, and immediately wrote a brief intelligence report and sent it back to the imperial capital using trained letter eagles. This is because Juxiao Pavilion has a huge power and many capable people. In the past, there were people on the battlefield who were responsible for sending intelligence to the imperial capital. However, these people were slow and needed to change horses frequently on the way. Moreover, most of them did not have such powerful kung fu. Usually, it is to send news of defeat or victory to the imperial capital so that the emperor can know the situation on the front line in time. It is almost unprecedented that Her Majesty the Queen and the Prince Regent are so securely seated in the palace at this time and can keep abreast of the trends on the front line at any time, because no one has ever been able to do so. When the second good news was delivered to the imperial capital, it was already mid-November. The weather was getting colder day by day, and it was winter in a blink of an eye. To deal with the epidemic, attacking with fire is the only way. Wrong. You read the information with a calm expression on his face. Xianyu Enyao did a good job. Nan 11 came over and put the new fur cloak made this year on Rong Yu's shoulders. With Xiejin and Mo Lingen here, Xianyu and Yao can worry less, and the Obsidian army can win faster. At least Xianyu and Yao can save a lot of worry when it comes to normal information. If Fengshi is broken, we should be able to achieve a complete victory at the end of the year, Rong Yu said calmly. This year's New Year's gift presented by Xianyu and Yao is this good news. I don't want the Nanyu royal family to survive this new year. Destroying a country in less than half a year, Nan 11 raised a smile on her lips. Isn't it too fast? Unhappy, Rong Yu said. The king of the Black Obsidian army gave Xianyu and Yao more than 2 years to train. The weapons, horses, and armor are all of the highest quality. There are also Chu Nanyi, Mo Lingen, and Xiejin. This is a powerful help. If he fights for a year and a half, I can expose him when he comes back. What's more, the king of Huainan guarded his back, holding back nearly half of the South Vietnamese troops. Nan 11 smiled, leaned over and kissed him on the face. Don't be so cruel. We should be gentler with our valued generals. Gentle. Rong Yu was silent for a moment. As long as the imperial city of South Vietnam is captured and the palace is breached, South Vietnam will be doomed to be destroyed. Other countries will be shocked by such amazing speed and efficiency. After the new year, other ambitious countries will also. It's time to lie down for a while. Nan 11 hummed. It's warm in spring. Let's do more things in the court and give Xianyu and Yao and Xiejin a long vacation, Rong Yu said calmly. Quan should be a reward for their hard work in this war. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows slightly. Long vacation. Let them go out and play for a while, Rong Yu pondered. By the way, we will go back to Huainan. The father and son can make some adjustments to Huainan's military strength. Hearing this, Nan 11 nodded slowly. The king of Huainan guarded the border with sufficient troops to defend South Vietnam. When South Vietnam was destroyed, there would be no need for border defense. Instead, the surviving troops of South Vietnam needed to be reorganized. Sending some Huainan troops to South Vietnam to guard the imperial city can not only act as a deterrent, but also allow the South Vietnamese subjects to know more quickly who their future masters will be. After the collapse of South Vietnam, the extra territory needs to be managed by officials. Nan 11 leaned on the brocade couch and said in a calm voice, how do you plan to arrange it? Rong Yu sat beside her, lifted up his cloak, and wrapped Nan 11 in it. Many new students have been selected this year, so that they can get started with each department as soon as possible. Among the 6 departments, ministers with loyalty and ability will be selected. He was transferred out and sent away for a few years to govern the city of Nanyu. After thinking about it, he added, the territory of South Vietnam is not small, and it needs many people. If the original officials of South Vietnam have available people, they will continue to retain them. This will not cause too much uneasiness to the people of South Vietnam. Taking advantage of the opportunity of destroying the country, killing a group of corrupt officials is inspiring, and all officials who have done their best to serve the people will be pardoned. In this way, the people of South Vietnam will not be afraid and uneasy due to the sudden destruction of the country, and there will be no fear within the borders of South Vietnam. Continuing unrest can be avoided as much as possible. It seems that you have already made a plan in your heart. Nan 11 smiled slightly and pointed at Rong Yu's heart. The ravine has been formed, just waiting to be implemented step by step. Rong Yu smiled, lowered his head and kissed her on the face. Your Majesty, you are wise. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 828. Xianyu and Yao took advantage of the Yu kingdom to attack Nanyu with every success. Rong Yu also sent a handwriting to the Huainan king early. The border troops and horses were ready to fight at any time. As long as the South Vietnamese troops and horses moved, the Huainan king could send troops to follow Obsidian. The army attacked from the north and the south. If the soldiers and horses at the South Vietnamese border do not move, the Huainan army will also not move. When the South Vietnamese break the city, all the soldiers and horses who take the initiative to surrender will be spared their lives. The king of Huainan received the decree and was ready to fight at any time. The Bong Sok fire burned for 3 days and 3 nights, and God took good care of it. On the evening of the 4th day, just as Ming Mei expected, dark clouds began to cover, there was a muffled thunder, and the weather suddenly turned dark, and it looked like it was going to rain at any time. The sound of horse hooves came galloping. Xian Yuanyao came with the 18 guards, followed by 4 strong horses. A separate room has been prepared for you in Quang City. Follow this general back to the city immediately. Mo Lingan said, it's better to wait for 2 more days, just in case. There is no such thing as a chance. Xian Yuanyao's voice was sonorous and powerful. It's going to rain. Several generals under my general do not agree with you staying here, saying that you are people who have made great achievements. Treating them so harshly will chill the soldiers. Hard. Mo Lingan's mouth twitched. Which general said this? You have been here for 4 days. If there is no obvious fever, you should be fine. Xian Yuanyao ignored Mo Lingan's teasing and said, follow me back to the city. Xiejin smiled. I felt uncomfortable not being able to take a shower at first, but now that I am about to leave, I begin to miss the life in the wilderness. Are you sick? Mo Lingan stood up. It's rare that we are in good health. We slept outdoors for 4 days and nights without catching the wind and cold. But the feeling of being blown by the cold wind here at night is really not pleasant. I don't want to stay any longer. Woolen cloth. He looked at the dark clouds rolling in the sky and said, you can stay here if you like. The heavy downpour tonight will just solve your discomfort of not being able to take a shower in the past few days. Xiejin stood up and straightened out his wrinkled clothes. I don't want Yao Yao to worry. Xian Yuanyao said nothing. The 18 guards, Ming Yan and Ming Mei, had already begun to arrange the bedding. Although it would not be good to burn them like this, in an emergency, Xiejin directly asked them to throw all the bedding into the fire. This heavy rain came just in time. Xiejin looked at the sky. Sure enough, even God helped me in Dongling. It rained when it should rain, and there was absolutely not even a drop of rain when it shouldn't. The Emperor of South Vietnam is now. I've probably become an ant on a hot pot and I don't know what to do. Hurry up, stop talking so much nonsense. Xian Yuanyao frowned. The rain will come down in a while, and you will all be soaked. Xiejin and Mo Lingan quickly mounted their horses, followed closely by Ming Mei and Ming Yan. If we are soaked in water, you won't be able to run away, Yao Yao. Xiejin said, let's go. Xian Yuanyao glared at him, took the lead, and galloped away. The group finally abandoned the bonfire in the wilderness, went back to Quang City, took a hot bath, and had a good sleep. There was lightning and thunder in the sky, and the dark clouds rolled more and more fiercely. After a while, heavy raindrops began to fall. Xian Yuanyao and Xiejin sped up and rushed towards Quang City. Sure enough, we were soaked in the water. Mo Lingan couldn't help but say, why couldn't Prince Yao come to take us into the city half an hour in advance? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 829. Do you think this general has a great plan? Xian Yuanyao said angrily. I should let you feel the love of the storm in the countryside. Prince Yao doesn't want to let go of his wife, right? Mo Lingan sneered. I am taking advantage of Mr. Xieju. Xiejin said, in that case, you can continue to stay in the suburbs. I know that you two are of the same mind. Mo Lingan held the reins with both hands, and the falling raindrops wet his hair and clothes, but he still maintained a calm tone. But I am not someone who can be bullied. I will ask people to write down any good news that comes down. I will try to make Master Xie's contribution as great as possible, so that the Lord can understand how brave and fearless Mr. Xie is, and he sacrificed his life. In addition, I will also ask Mr. Xie himself for the information about South Vietnam in the future. Work harder, I am busy with other tasks, I don't have time to stay here and be treated harshly by you, and I will be bullied by you together. Xiejin stretched out his hand to wipe the rain off his face and said in a calm voice, "You only brought 2 people here this time. If I kill you after entering the city, I guess no one will know. Or as Prince Yao said, what do you think, Mr. Mo, by selling you to bandits to be his wife and blocking the news so that no one can find you?" Mo Lincoln provoked, "You can try it." The city gate was close at hand, and a group of people rushed through it in the rainy night. As the city gate slowly closed, everything outside was cut off. The sound of horse hooves rang on the streets of the city, and they soon entered a house. The servants brought clean clothes. Several people wiped off the rain and quickly changed their clothes. Xian Yuanyao then arranged for a military doctor to enter the house and give Xiejin and Mo Lingan. The 4 of them conducted a detailed examination. After hearing and questioning, the military doctor looked relaxed and said, "Young Master Xie and young Master Mo seem to be fine. They should not be infected with the epidemic virus. When we entered Fengshi City, we wore 3 layers of clothes, covered our faces with face towels, and protected our hands and feet. After leaving the city, we took off 2 layers of clothes and even threw away our shoes." Xiejin said, "If we can still get infected like this, then it is destined to kill me." The military doctor nodded slowly, "Master Xie did the right thing. There are many soldiers in the city, and if someone gets infected, the consequences will be serious, so it never hurts to be careful." Xiejin and Mo Lingan naturally would not tease in front of the military doctor, let alone joke about the epidemic. After listening to the old military doctor's words, they both nodded. "That's right, so we left the crowd and stayed outside alone for 4 days." Mo Lingan said, "If it hadn't rained so heavily tonight, we would still be staying in the suburbs now. You can usually tell in 2 or 3 days whether you have contracted the epidemic virus." The military doctor said, "It will rain heavily tonight and the weather will be cold. If you contract the wind and cold due to this, I'm afraid it will make people even more uneasy. Being healthy and asymptomatic is the most reassuring result. If you catch a cold, it will be bad and it will easily make people think wildly. This rain should last all night." Xian Yuanyao stood in front of the window, listening to the clear sound of rain outside. "It just extinguished the embers in the city, saved us time to attack South Vietnam, and created an excellent opportunity." Xiejin raised his eyes and stared at his back. "When does Yao Yao plan to organize the army?" "Let's set out early the day after tomorrow." Xian Yuanyao turned around. "No matter if the rain stops, we will take advantage of the boosted morale now to capture all the cities in South Vietnam and attack directly towards the imperial city." Xiejin and Mo Lingan had no objection to this. After the military doctor left, Xian Yuanyao ordered someone to bring ginger soup to the 4 of them, drink a bowl of soup to get rid of the cold, and then go take a hot bath. The quilt will be thicker tonight, and tomorrow you can be active and full of vitality. It's rare that Crown Prince Yao can care about people like a mother." Mo Lingan said, "Is this because you have been with Xiejin for a long time and have gained experience in taking care of you?" Xian Yuanyao frowned. "Mo Lingan, don't be so presumptuous." Xiejin almost choked on the ginger soup, twitched the corner of his mouth, and said at the right time, "Yao Yao is mighty. You should be more serious." Xian Yuanyao turned to look at him. "You have been teasing me every day, are you done yet? He is a dignified general, he doesn't want to lose face." Xiejin was taught like a good baby, "I know I was wrong, I will pay attention to it in the future." Mo Lingan silently turned his head and looked out the window, unable to bear to look directly. "After drinking the ginger soup, I went to take a bath." Mo Lingan followed the boy out. Mingmei and Mingmei always did their own things and did not need to be waited on. Only Xiejin, the delicate 9th master of the Xie family, immediately hugged Xian Yuanyao after the other 3 left. "Waste, I haven't been able to hold Yao Yao for 4 days. Yao Yao took a bath with me. Xian Yuanyao lowered his eyes and looked at him. You can settle the accounts after taking a bath. Always thinking about settling accounts, Xiejin smiled sullenly. Why can't Yao Yao be more generous? Even now, he is still thinking about settling the score, and he doesn't feel sorry for the hardships he endured during the 4 days outside. Dadu, Xian Yuanyao reached out and pinched his face. Dadu can make you cry and beg for mercy. Yao Yao Xiejin's eyebrows twitched slightly. You are a pure and upright little leopard. You cannot have such evil thoughts and damage the general's majestic and domineering image. Xian Yuanyao's tone was calm. The image of being mighty and domineering is to be maintained in front of the soldiers. It is not necessary in front of you. After a pause, I just want you to cry. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 830. In mid-November, the weather truly enters winter. A heavy rain extinguished the embers in Fengxi City. After the rain, the weather became increasingly cold and biting. The soldiers added an extra layer of thin cotton clothes under their armor to keep out the cold and ensure that their freedom of movement would not be affected. Xian Yuanyao ordered the whole army to set off, with majestic cavalry and flying banners. A big word is flying in the wind. The Obsidian army divided into 2 routes and swept southward from the east and west. After the main force of the army was defeated, South Vietnam had no defense. Wherever the cavalry passed, people were panicked and their armor was abandoned. Trash, a loud bang sounded in the palace, and the emperor sitting on the dragon throne was full of shock, anger, and anxiety. 100,000 troops can't resist the 60,000 soldiers and horses of Dongling district. Didn't Ge Yunhui boast about Haikao? Can Dongling Iron Cavalry and Fengxi City die together? All civil and military officials in the court knelt down in fear. Your Majesty, calm down. The plan for now is to send troops to resist quickly, otherwise. Send troops to resist? Who can resist? The emperor roared, his usually majestic face no longer calm. Whoever is willing to fight, I will grant him glory and wealth and be promoted to the 3rd level. If he can successfully defeat the Dongling army, I will grant him the prince is hereditary and has 10,000 taels of gold. The king made a heavy promise, but all the officials in court remained silent. At this time, who else has the ability to fight? The generals in the court who could lead the army were framed by the queen and Ge Yunhui together. They died and retreated. Now that Ge Yunhui was defeated and died, and the South Vietnamese troops were defeated, who else could lead the task of retreating the enemy? The Dongling cavalry are extremely powerful in combat, and even if someone leads the troops into battle at this time, it is tantamount to seeking death. Trash. A bunch of trash. You are all trash. Seeing that no one responded, the emperor pointed at the ministers in the palace angrily. Every one of you, you are so majestic when you come in and out. I don't know how much glory and wealth you have enjoyed. Now Dongling's army is approaching the city, but you are so timid that you don't dare to even think about it, and you can't come up with a decent idea. What's the use of raising you waists? What's the use? Angry roars echoed in the hall. He was like an anxious ant, more like a trapped animal in a desperate situation. As wonderful as he had imagined in his daydream a few months ago, the reality at this time was so cruel. A cold slap on his face left him no room for regret. The ministers in the palace knelt in silence. The emperor needed to vent. After all, the imperial city was about to be breached, and the emperor of South Vietnam would soon become the king of the subjugated country. These ministers were also about to become prisoners and slaves of the subjugated country. What would happen if he did not vent at this time? Panic, uneasiness, anxiety, fear. Maybe there is a little bit of luck. But after all, the feeling of luck only accounts for a negligible small part, because the hope is too slim, because the Dongling Iron Cavalry is so powerful, more terrifying than imagined, they are so ferocious, their combat effectiveness is so strong, and their siege efficiency is so fast. Report. Soldiers outside the hall hurriedly ran over and knelt in the hall, reporting to the emperor. The dongling iron cavalry is divided into two groups. They have broken through Jinwu and are heading towards Shengjing to encircle them. Another thunder struck. The emperor slumped down on the dragon chair, his face pale and gray, and he clenched his fingers tightly on the golden armrest. If you look carefully, you can still see subtle tremors. No one in the hall spoke. Everyone knows that unless you voluntarily lead troops to fight at this time, opening your mouth is seeking death.